historic conflicts.
In the early months of 1880, the world stood in awe of a single man, Napoleon Bonaparte. Crowned Emperor of the French, master of continental Europe, his ambition knew no boundaries. His armies, the Grande Armée, were a force unparalleled in size and discipline, stretching from the sunlit fields of France to the distant borders of Russia. At the height of his power, Napoleon gazed eastward, envisioning a new conquest, one that would cement his legacy as the greatest military leader in history. It began with a crossing, the Niemen River, in June of 1812. More than 600,000 men, a mosaic of nations and tongues, marched under the tricolor standard. Animated lines surge across the map, fanning out in columns and divisions, pushing relentlessly into the heart of Russia. The Grande Armée, an unstoppable tide, swept through forests and fields, over rivers and roads, their boots pounding the earth in rhythmic unison. "Soldiers," Napoleon proclaimed, "the Second Polish War has begun. The first was glorious for French arms. The present will be even more so, and the peace it will bring will be worthy of my people and of you." Yet the enemy did not wait for them. The Russian army, led by Generals Barclay de Tolly and Kutuzov, retreated deeper into their own vastness, trading land for time, burning crops and villages to deny the invaders sustenance. The sky grew heavy with smoke, the fields blackened and barren. Still the Grande Armée pressed on, driven by Napoleon's iron will and an unshakable belief in their destiny. As the weeks passed, the land itself became hostile. Supply lines stretched thin across hundreds of miles. Food grew scarce, water polluted. The men grew restless, the horses weaker. "We are marching into the unknown," wrote a French officer. "The roads are endless, and the enemy is nowhere to be seen." Still the Grande Armée advanced, the promise of victory shimmering on the horizon. Then came Borodino. On September 7, 1812, two titanic armies collided near a small village west of Moscow. The Battle of Borodino, one of the bloodiest single days in military history. The thunder of cannon fire rolled across the fields. Musket volleys crackled like lightning, and bayonets flashed in the morning light. Men screamed, horses reared, and the ground shook beneath the fury of war. "I have never seen anything like it," recalled a French grenadier. The dead and dying lay everywhere. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of blood. After hours of brutal combat, the Russians withdrew, leaving the field to Napoleon. But it was a victory drenched in loss. Over 30,000 French casualties, nearly 45,000 Russian dead or wounded. The Grande Armée was victorious, but it had been bled dry. The path to Moscow lay open, yet the price had been staggering. When the French finally entered Moscow on September 14th, they found a city cloaked in silence. Its people gone, its riches hidden, its heart cold. Then, as night fell, flames erupted. Fires consumed the wooden city, turning the sky crimson and choking the air with ash. "Moscow was burning," wrote Captain Coignet in his diary. "We watched helplessly as whole districts vanished in the inferno. We had come so far, only to find ruin." Napoleon waited for peace. Weeks passed and no envoys came. The Russian Tsar, Alexander I, refused to surrender. The autumn winds grew colder, and every day the city offered less. The Grande Armée, already weakened, faced starvation. Supplies dwindled. Horses, essential for transport and cavalry, died of hunger and exhaustion. The men scavenged for scraps, burning furniture for warmth, trading uniforms for morsels of bread. Then, with the first snows of October, Napoleon gave the order, retreat. The march back was a descent into hell. The Russian winter, legendary for its ferocity, descended upon the invaders. Temperatures plummeted below freezing. Blizzards howled through the night, burying columns in white oblivion. Frostbite gnawed at flesh, turning fingers and toes black. Men wrapped themselves in rags, huddled for warmth, and prayed for dawn. "The cold is beyond all description," wrote Sergeant Bourgogne. "We march surrounded by death. The snow is red with blood, and the silence is broken only by the cries of the dying." Starvation stalked the columns. Bread was a memory. Men chewed leather and boiled horse bones for soup. Those who fell behind were lost, either to the cold or to the ever-present threat of Cossack raiders. The Russian cavalry, swift and merciless, harried the flanks, picking off stragglers. Attacking at night, their sabers flashing in the moonlight. "We fear the Cossacks as much as the cold," wrote a Saxon soldier. "They come from nowhere, ghosts in the snow." Every village, every river crossing became a battle for survival. At the Berezina River in late November, the retreating army faced its final ordeal. The ice-choked waters, the Russian guns on the far bank, and the chaos of crossing. Thousands perished in the freezing current or under enemy fire. "The scene was one of utter madness," recounted General Rapp. "We fought not just the enemy, but nature itself." By the time Napoleon abandoned his shattered army and raced back to Paris, the Grand Armée was a shadow of its former self. Frostbitten, starving, broken in spirit and body, the survivors stumbled across the borders of Russia. Disease claimed many more on the road to safety. Of the more than 600,000 men who had crossed the Niemen in the summer, fewer than 100,000 made it out alive. The losses are staggering. Entire regiments vanished. Of the 50,000 men of the Imperial Guard, only a fraction survived. The vast cavalry, once the pride of Europe, reduced to a handful of gaunt survivors. The human cost was matched only by the suffering of the Russian people. Their land, their homes, laid waste in the fires of invasion. The diaries and letters of the men who survived bear witness to their ordeal. "We are not men, but ghosts," wrote Captain Fane. "The memory of Russia will haunt us to our graves." Another wrote, "I have seen the end of the world, and it is white and silent." The invasion of Russia marked the turning point of Napoleon's empire. The myth of invincibility was shattered. Across Europe, the news spread. Napoleon could be defeated. Allies turned against him. New coalitions formed. The years that followed would see the emperor's star fade, his power broken forever at Waterloo. But in the snows of Russia, the fate of a generation was sealed. The dreams of conquest, the pride of armies, the hopes of an emperor, all were buried beneath the endless, merciless winter. From over 600,000 men, fewer than 100,000 returned. And so the road to Moscow became a graveyard of ambition, a lesson written in ice and blood, echoing through history as a warning to all who would challenge the might of winter and the resilience of a people defending their homeland. The silence of the Russian steppes still remembers the footsteps of the Grand Armée, lost to time, swallowed by the snow. Thank you for respecting history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any battles.